Hello, my name is Olga Schihalejev. I work at the University of Tartu as an associated professor of religious education. In my presentation, I first give an overview of Estonian religious composition. Then I tackle briefly the history of RE in Estonia, and finally I'll tell you more about how religious education is organized today in Estonia. So, welcome to Estonia, a beautiful country in Northern Europe, which is proud of its nature, as we have more than 1,500 islands and 1,400 lakes, and about half of Estonia is covered with forest. Our population is about 1.3 million, but our territory is bigger than Denmark. Historically, Estonia has been religiously heterogeneous for many centuries. There has been a Lutheran population since 16th century after Reformation, shortly, and a sizable Orthodox population since the middle of 18th century. From the same period, we can also speak about other permanently present religious communities in Estonia, such as Jews, Muslims, and Old Believers, who fled from persecution to Baltic states. Before the Second World War, Estonia could be called a Lutheran country. 78% of our population were Lutherans, with a sizable 19% of Orthodox minority, and several smaller denominations adding up to the country's religious heterogeneity, while less than 2% had no religious affiliation. During the second half of the 20th century, when Estonia was under Soviet occupation, the religious composition of its population changed drastically. The anti-religious policies and measures of the Soviet state are at least one, but not the only factor of this change. Nowadays, Estonia is often seen as one of the least religious countries in Europe, at least with regard to religious affiliation and traditional religious practices. According to the population and housing census conducted in 2000 and 2011, only 29% of our population aged 15 and over defined their religious affiliation. Young people adhere to religion 3 times less compared to older age group. So we see 14% for 15 to 19 years old and 44% of affiliated people for 65 years and older. The last census in 2011 shows that for the first time in our history, the most prevalent religion among the population aged 15 and older was Orthodoxy with 16%, followed by Lutheranism with only 10%. 2% of the population were affiliated with other Christian denominations and 1% with other religions. Ethnic Estonians adhere to religion less than other nationalities living in Estonia. However, religion does not disappear from Estonia, but rather it changes its forms into non-organized fluid forms of spirituality. Let us come to the brief history of religious education. The first schools were established in Estonia already more than 700 years ago by cathedrals and monasteries, like in other European countries. At the end of 18th century, reading skills were required from all people. There were about 600 schools in our country, most of them rather small, and by the way, the number is bigger than nowadays. At the beginning of the 20th century, all children had to go to school for at least 4, and from 1930s, 6 years. This education was compulsory for all and free of charge. In regards to religious education, of course, the subject was very important subject in all the schools. And one could study either Orthodox religious education or Lutheran religious education, but you couldn't choose between them. It was depending on the school you learned up to the beginning of 20th century. Now, the beginning of the 20th century marked very important changes for RE. I have no time to go into interesting details now, but just summarize the most important outcomes. The new approach of RE was introduced by Peter Põld, you see him on this picture, and welcomed by legislators. Namely, RE became interconfessional and optional, both for teachers to teach and for students to participate. The subject made a clear distinction between catechesis in churches, RE was viewed as a responsibility of the school and not a branch of the church. The subject had to be based on pedagogical, not theological principles. It was stressed that there was no place for indoctrination to increase the number of church members. At the upper secondary level, new content such as relationship between religion and science or the introduction of world religions, for example, was introduced. This tradition and development of RE was broken by the Soviet occupation that began in 1940 and its repressive measures against churches and religion with state-driven endorsement of atheism through formal and informal means, as you see on this slide. As a result, religion was shifted into a very deep private sphere and religious literacy declined year by year. The restoration of independence in the early 1990s, after the years of monotheistic ideology experienced by more than 2 generations, Estonia faced a multi-religious world and a new opportunity for religious education. The subject was reintroduced in some schools, but it was unclear what the aims and content of this subject should be. It became soon clear that one cannot just copy-paste the curricula from the early 20th century. The interrupted tradition of RE stood between several forces: its historical roots, textbooks for confessional RE translated from Finnish, and rather suspicious views about the need for RE from many people. To understand this opposition to RE, one must remember that the generations that grew up during the Soviet occupation had experienced no RE at school. And in this context, Pille Valk, whom you see here, started to draft a new vision of RE, and her works culminated with the doctoral thesis in 2003 and the inclusion of RE in national curricula in 2010. One of the important aspects what should be not overlooked in relation to RE development in Estonia is the fact that only a minority of students have any religious affiliation or religious socialization at home. In this highly secular setting, Pille Valk has described a contextual model of RE, which must take into consideration very different aspects, such as historical cultural context, expectations and attitudes of different stakeholders, religious composition, legal framework, including national curriculum and wider educational system, but also Estonian tradition of RE and practices of RE in other countries. After years of research and negotiating with different groups of people such as headmasters, teachers of different subjects, parents and students, Volk proposed syllabus for RE, and it was fine-tuned by a group of RE teachers, including myself, in following years. Nowadays, we have RE in our national curriculum. RE is an elective, non-confessional subject, and it is based on the principles of freedom of religion and belief. It has four main aims. First, to provide knowledge about different religions as a means towards religious literacy and understanding cultural heritage. Second, to support students' moral development, social awareness, and responsibility. Third, to develop an open identity and readiness for dialogue across different religious and non-religious beliefs. To shape skills and attitudes that form the basis for mutual understanding, respect, and cooperation in a pluralistic society. And last but not least, fourth, to support development of students' critical thinking about religion. There are 5 core courses described in curricula, 3 courses for basic school, and in Estonia it means for students aged 7 to 16 years. We start with stories from different religious and non-religious contexts. These stories enable children to reflect in relation to their own life experience about the choices they make and ways they give meaning to the life events. By the third core course, we move to more systematic overview of world religions. 2 core courses at upper secondary level enable students to engage with academic study of religion and have more detailed insight into often hidden religion in Estonia. I found our syllabus for RE to be engaging and relevant. The main drawbacks and problems are related to the fact that the subject is optional, as clearly shown in Celia Harm's doctoral thesis, and you can read from her article for this project. RE in Estonia differs greatly from school to school. As I said, RE is an elective, not a compulsory subject in our curriculum. And most of the schools in Estonia do not provide a special subject dealing with religion. The students learn about religions in history, civics, or geography. Only about 10% of public schools have non-confessional religious education, as introduced in this presentation. Mostly RE is provided in the upper secondary level, among one of many electives to choose from. Some exceptional basic schools also have RE in their curricula, at least one course. In addition, private schools are allowed to have confessional religious education, and we find this model in Christian schools, but also Waldorf schools. About the Christian schools, you can read from Triin Käpp's doctoral thesis or her article for this project. The Union of Estonian Christian Private Schools is an association of private schools in Estonia based on Christian values. Over 2,500 students are enrolled in the 11 member schools of the Union in this academic year. Many of these schools have confessional religious education. This RE differs greatly from school to school. Several of them use some elements from the national syllabus of non-confessional RE, especially for students in the secondary and upper secondary levels. In addition to regular lessons of RE, the University of Tartu organizes Olympiad for religious education each year to engage highly talented students, as it is done also in other subjects. The Olympiad for RE is held in 2 rounds, and it is open to all students under the age of 19. Students from public schools and also students from Christian schools take part in this competition. In the preliminary round, an essay must be written on one of the topics chosen by jury. The 10 best essayists will be invited to the final round, which will consist of 4 tasks. The first task is the oral defense of the essay. The second task is a test on world religions. The third task is a debate, and the final task combines creativity and collaborative skills with knowledge. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, you can use my email. And good luck with your project, Irene.